What's up everybody? Just wanted to do a pretty fun video today. I'm gonna be ranking all of the Southeast Asian countries in terms of arm wrestling prowess. Now I think I'm in a pretty unique position to be able to do this because I'm one of the very few people who has recently arm wrestled multiple different Southeast Asian nations. You know, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and of course my own home country of Singapore, if you guys don't already know. So 6 out of the 11 known Southeast Asian countries right now, I have pulled with them. The rest of the Southeast Asian countries, I haven't directly pulled with them, but I have talked with some of the people, some of my friends online, sort of figured out what the rough level of the countries are. And of course, one of the main missions of the Eastside Arm Wrestling channel is to promote the Southeast Asian region in terms of arm wrestling, because I don't know about you guys, but I feel like most people don't really know that much about this region. People know about US arm wrestling, they know about Eastern European, they know about Australian arm wrestling, but Southeast Asian arm wrestling, you know, I challenge you to name like 5 Southeast Asian arm wrestlers off the top of your head. You probably wouldn't know any of them. So this is just gonna be a fun video, mostly for my Southeast Asian viewers out there, but also for, you know, my Western viewers and viewers from other countries to know a little bit more about the levels over here vis-a-vis one another within the region. And without further ado, first one that I'm gonna be ranking is Vietnam. So for Vietnam, most recently pulled in Vietnam at the Vietnam Open over in Hanoi in July. If you haven't seen that video, I'm gonna link it in the description over here. But Vietnam is very, very strong in the lower weight classes. In their, you know, 50, 60-ish kilo classes, it's not uncommon to see, you know, 20, 30, even 40 people filling up the classes. And for someone like me, who weighs, you know, 70 plus, 80 plus kilos, that's a very interesting, it's a very unique thing to see, because in Singapore, we don't have such lightweight people, but over there, they're in abundance. So Vietnam, I think their strength truly lies within the lower weight classes. And in this hypothetical scenario where we maybe have sort of a Southeast Asian Games, where, you know, you send the best pullers from each of the weight categories, and then you throw them in sort of like in World Championships or Europeans or Asian Championships, you know, throw them in, try to get as many medals as possible for your country. At the end of the day, tally up the medals and then see which country got the most gold, most silver, blah, blah, blah. I think Vietnam would actually do pretty well thanks to their dominance in the lower weight classes, which is why I think I'm pretty confident in putting Vietnam over here in tier A. So A tier over here. Where they start to lack is towards the higher end of the weight classes. So once you start hitting like 80 plus, 85 plus kilos, all the way up to the super heavyweight classes, they don't really have that many strong guys. They have a couple of strong welterweights, but the only real heavyweight guy they have is Vinh Hong Duc, who recently got 3rd place at IFA World Championships. But other than him, they're a little bit lacking over there. That's going to be keeping them from hitting the S class within this region. Now, moving on to the next one, which is Thailand. Thailand, you guys probably, if you know of any Thai pullers, it's probably going to be either Guy Thanapat or Josh Nicholas. Both of them are friends of mine, and those guys are very, very strong pullers in their own right. But to my knowledge, right now, Guy Thanapat is a bit of a head and shoulders above the rest of the arm wrestling community, with one caveat of Book Sutiwat from Thailand being in retirement status right now. In the past, Book Sutiwat from Thailand was without a doubt the #1 puller in all of Southeast Asia, and I think all the top pullers from every other Southeast Asian country would agree with me on that. In his peak, in his prime, you know, 5 to 10 years ago, he was without a doubt the king of Southeast Asia, but right now he is not exactly very active. He still pulls, he still trains, but more on a casual basis. Some of you may have seen him recently pulling with Schoolboy. Schoolboy beat him at a competition in Thailand. And also my friend Guy Tanapat had some practice pulls with Boksuriwat, managed to beat him as well. So this sort of puts Thailand maybe in the B to A tier. I'm not too sure where to put it, because other than the names that I've listed out so far, they also have other decent pullers, both in the lightweight to the welter and middleweight categories. So I think overall they are a really strong country. I would put them at B for now, probably a high B tier. Next up, we have the Philippines. So if you've seen my recent video, 2 Filipino pullers came over, the champion, their lightweight champion and their welterweight champion, Mark Renzi and Sean Chispa. Both of them amazing guys, love them. Filipino arm wrestling has come a long way over the past 10-15 years. Back then, there was only one name known from Philippines, and that was Mark Lewis Ben. Mark Lewis Ben is pretty much the godfather of Filipino arm wrestling, the most decorated, most well-known Filipino arm wrestler. He is a living legend over there. He's been dominant for the past 15 years or so in the Philippines. No one has beat him left and right-handed. And it seems that that will continue to go on for the foreseeable future, because as of right now, he is still head and shoulders above the rest of the Filipino community. And having seen Mark and seen his level recently at Hanoi Open as well, and then also pulling with Sean Chispa and Mark Renzi, I want to say that Filipino arm wrestling is in an okay space right now, but it's not exactly very, very high level. I don't think they are at the same level as Thailand arm wrestling just yet. If we're just talking about pure medal count, I would say Filipino arm wrestling right at this moment is probably like a high C tier that can change very, very quickly over the next 6 months to a year. Next up is gonna be Indonesia. Now, I first went to Indonesia to pull early last year. If you guys remember my super match with one of their middleweight champions, Iwan Diono, I lost that one 2-3. So fun. Went back again towards the end of the year for the Veer Cup Championship thing, where you saw my friend Zhuyu go off against Svetan Gashevsky in an awesome battle. Such a fun experience. Indonesia is also similar to Vietnam in that they have a lot of lightweight pullers in that 60-ish plus kilo category, but their level is just not quite as high as Vietnam, but still pretty decent at the lighter weights. And where Vietnam misses out in the middle-ish weight category, Indonesia has in abundance. So their 80 to 90 kilo category is full of pretty strong pullers that are of pretty similar levels. So I think that any medal tally that Indonesia loses out toward the lower weight classes, they can make up for pretty decently in the middle-ish weight category. But then, of course, they start to taper off towards the higher weight categories, the heavyweights, super heavyweights. In the past, the only guy over there that really had a chance was Tommy from Indonesia. He was the Indonesian Arm Wrestling president, Strong Pullers Federation. Rest his soul. Tommy was a good friend of mine, passed away earlier this year. And the Indonesian arm wrestling community is very gutted, very sad, and the wider Southeast Asian community as a whole as well. It was very sad to have lost such a great puller in Tommy. But that being said, I think that because of their abundance of strong pullers in the middle-ish weight categories, and also having a very strong foundation in the lighter weight classes, I think there's a good argument for putting Indonesia up in the A tier along with Vietnam. They're both probably pretty close. Vietnam stronger in the lighter weights and Indonesia in the middle weights. Next up, my own country of sunny Singapore, the little red dot. Now, Singapore is, I have, of course, the most knowledge of Singapore compared to these other countries because I have firsthand knowledge of the community over here. Singapore, I can strongly say that we are very, very strong in the center of the pack. So what I mean is by 70-ish kilos to about 85 kilo, that 15 kilo range, we are extremely, extremely strong, very dominant, and I think we can probably rack up probably the most medals from about 70-ish kilos to about 85 kilos. But unlike Vietnam and Indonesia, our lower end is sorely lacking. So the 50 plus kilos, 60 plus kilos, very lacking. Most of the guys over here weigh, well above 70-ish kilos. And if you go like 70 and below, it's mostly our junior guys who haven't really grown into their adult size yet. And also towards the higher end, 90 plus kilos and above, we lack a lot of pullers in that range as well. So we are very, very average if you want to phrase it like that. But that being said, our middle of the pack pullers, very, very strong. Guys like me, Valen, Zhuyi, Wisely, we have a lot of guys who can do very well in that middle range. But in terms of getting a lot of medals, because we lack that lower end and we lack that higher end, I think we are probably somewhere above Thailand, but maybe below Vietnam and Indonesia a little bit, just in terms of sheer numbers. Singapore is not a big country. Singapore only has like 5-6 million people, and our community is super, super small compared to the other Southeast Asian nations in our region where they have millions and millions of people in their country. We only have, so few. In terms of medal count, I would probably play it a little bit more conservative. I think we would get more medals than Thailand. Like if Thailand was a B, we would be a B+, but I don't think we'll be able to get as many medals as compared to Vietnam or Indonesia, where they just have the sheer numbers on their side. They have way more pullers compared to Singapore, where we only have a very limited number of actual competitive level pullers. Malaysia, our neighboring country, used to be one nation like 50, 60 years back. But yeah, Malaysia is, I think, in my opinion, right now still the strongest overall nation in Southeast Asia for arm wrestling. Our current Southeast Asian champion, Mike Ford, is from Malaysia, in Eastern Malaysia, in Sabah. And the Malaysian nationals is probably one of the most challenging, the most stacked nationals in Southeast Asia. And there's a lot of competition in Malaysia itself. Very strong pullers in the higher end. So I think Malaysia is pretty much the only Southeast Asian country where there is a pretty decent higher end level pullers in terms of weight. So from 90, 100, 110 kilos, even to the open class, that is where Malaysia dominates. I don't think any other country in Southeast Asia comes close to Malaysia in those weight categories. On top of that, they also have a very, very decent middle weight class with a lot of guys who are very, very strong that can contend with some of the top guys in the region. So, guys like Helmi, Lukman, you've seen them at the 2022 Asian Championships in Malaysia. These are guys that I've pulled with. Amir, last year you saw him against me at IFA World Championships, giving me a hell of a fight. A lot of these guys, their 70 plus kilo to 80 plus kilo level is still killer. I think Singapore's 70 to 80 plus kilo is higher than Malaysia right now, but Malaysia also has a strong lighter weight class. Guys like Asri Asta, Safwan back when he was active, and a lot of stronger new lighter weight class guys in Malaysia are up and coming right now that are really, really strong. And I think because of this well-roundedness that Malaysia has, they're probably going to be the only nation in this tier list that's going to be in the S tier. Out of all of the Southeast Asian nations, I think Malaysia is the only one that's well-rounded enough to be in the S tier. But I'm warning you, we're coming for you. And of course, the next 5 nations, I have not personally had the honor of pulling directly with their pullers as well. So this is starting to become a little bit more speculative, but I'm just using knowledge that I have from online, from friends who have told me about things like that. Moving on to Cambodian arm wrestling. So Cambodian arm wrestling, I did not learn about it until earlier this year from a friend, Brendan Chan. He's currently located in Australia right now, but he's Cambodian, and he's told me about the levels over there. There are Cambodian arm wrestling competitions. It's still very much a very basic structure over there, but they still have competitions. The arm wrestlers over there are not too high level, but at least there is a decent community. Not going to be on the same level as the more popular countries such as Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, but I think Cambodian arm wrestling can sort of sit at the bottom of the C tier-ish. I'm just gonna put them in the C tier. Obviously, Cambodia is not yet on the same level as the Philippines. The Philippines, if they're a C+, then Cambodia is probably more like a C-. But Cambodia still has a good community. That's why I put them in the C tier. Next up is Myanmar arm wrestling. So Myanmar is another country where there is arm wrestling competitions. If you look it up on YouTube, there is Myanmar arm wrestling competitions. The pullers there seem to be pretty good. I have not pulled any of them before, but just because there are competitions, there are clubs over there that train for arm wrestling, I think that they shouldn't be too bad. But because we are comparing with other countries that I have stated so far to be pretty much the top in the region, countries like Malaysia, Vietnam, Singapore, I'm very, very sure that Myanmar doesn't have the community size yet to be able to contest with these other aforementioned nations, which is why, unfortunately, Myanmar, you are going to be the first of the D tier. Unfortunately, your level is just not high enough yet. Laos, now I can very, very comfortably say this is going to be a D tier class because of my friend Josh Nicholas, who visited Laos earlier this year to spread the knowledge of arm wrestling, and they brought over their tables, equipment, stuff like that, did a seminar over there in Laos to spread arm wrestling. And from what I've heard from Josh Nicholas and the Thai arm wrestling president, arm wrestling was pretty much non-existent in Laos at that point in time. So very confidently, I can put Laos in the D tier. It is even below Myanmar. If Myanmar was a D+, Laos is probably a D. Just comparing the community sizes between the two countries, very obviously there is a stark difference. Laos has pretty much no competitions, no community at all, whereas Myanmar does have competitions and a community. That is why it is a D. Even further below Laos would be, I think, East Timor or Timor-Leste. This is the newest Southeast Asian nation and pretty much the most difficult one to travel to. So pretty much no information about arm wrestling in East Timor or Timor-Leste at all. Unlike Laos, which has already been exposed to arm wrestling, have an arm wrestling table, have had people like Josh Nicholas over there to teach them about arm wrestling, and probably having a seed planted in them for an arm wrestling community to grow. Timor-Leste had none of that, and that is why probably East Timor is gonna be the lowest tier country in Southeast Asia. If Laos is a D tier and Myanmar is a D+, then East Timor would be a D-, unfortunately. I'm not saying this to insult you guys. Again, if there are any East Timor pullers out there, I'm so sorry. Please reach out to me. Come over to Singapore and pull. I'd be free to, I'd be very happy to test your level and reevaluate this whole thing. Prove me wrong. But last but not least, Brunei. Brunei, if you guys don't know, is just a little country over in the island of I don't know what it was called, Kalimantan or something like that. But basically, it's on the same island as the states of Sabah, Sarawak, and also part of Indonesia. They all share the same island over there towards the east of Singapore and Malaysia. And Brunei is one of the small little countries over there. Historically speaking, just a fun fact, Brunei has had their country pegged with Singapore. So we historically could share countries. So our currency is interchangeable. You know, I was told this from a young age. You can use Brunei currency in Singapore and you can use Singapore currency in Brunei because it was a one-to-one. Not sure if it's still true now, but it would be cool if it still is. But yeah, Brunei arm wrestling is actually a pretty established community. Not as big as Malaysia, obviously, or even Indonesia, but they have been going on for many years now, and they have competitions, they have their own nationals, and of course, they have, because of their proximity, they have had exchanges with countries like Indonesia and Malaysia before. And because of these exchanges, getting the levels up and their years of experience, I think Brunei definitely should be in at least the C tier. But because I haven't heard of any Bruneian pullers that are of a very, very high level standard, you know, I haven't seen any Brunei pullers, for example, going to Malaysian competitions and winning them. I would still have to put Brunei in the C tier, but definitely above Cambodia in my opinion, but below Philippines. So if Brunei is a C, then Philippines is a C plus. But of course, guys, that's just my opinion. Don't take any of this too seriously. It's just me having fun, ranking the different countries, and I hope that you guys have fun with this as well. But yeah, let me know what you thought about this format of video. I just thought it's something pretty fun to do. I usually do more serious videos analyzing arm wrestling theories and concepts, but this was something that I thought was in a unique position to be able to share with you guys. So what do you guys think? Do you want to see a full East Asian tier list in the future? Let me know. That's going to be a big headache to make, but if you guys want it, I'll make it. See you guys in the next one.